The story begins with a meteorite heading straight for Earth. A family watching the news isn't worried because the mother, Maureen, used her job at the space agency to get them on a list to escape. On the night of the disaster, they boarded a spaceship to find a new planet for humans to live on. One day, while playing poker, their ship was hit by debris from a giant warship. The crash knocked them off course. The ship shook violently, and all the family could do was hold on to each other and hope they would be okay. They landed safely, but their relief didn't last long. A heavy metal box came loose and crushed Maureen's leg. The father, John, opened the top hatch, and their youngest son, Will, climbed out. But when their little daughter tried to get out, she was too big for the opening. Will jumped from the ship to a higher ledge and saw that the whole planet was covered in snow and ice. John and the others helped the injured Maureen out of a different hatch. Just then, they heard the sound of ice cracking. Water rushed in, and their spaceship, with all their supplies, sank into the freezing water. Their first priority was to treat Maureen's leg, but all the medical supplies were on the sunken ship. Then Maureen did something that surprised everyone. She took off her helmet. John yelled at her to stop because they didn't know if the air was safe to breathe. But John had already found out by accident. His pants were torn, and he realized the planet had enough oxygen for them to survive. The rest of the family took off their helmets and breathed in the cold, fresh air. Soon, they faced another big problem. The sun would set in 6 hours, and the temperature would drop to a deadly -51°C. Their spacesuits had heaters, but the batteries would only last for 5 hours. Without a way to recharge, they would freeze to death. John came up with a plan: dive into the sunken ship and get the spare batteries. Since his own suit was damaged and Maureen's leg was broken, he turned to his son, Will, who was the only one small enough to fit through the top hatch. But Will was too scared and just stood there shivering. Seeing her brother was terrified, his older sister Judy jumped into the water. John tried to call her back on the intercom, but she was taking a longer route through another hatch. The water was getting colder and would soon freeze over. Luckily, Judy found the batteries, but as she started to swim back, she realized the water in the ship was already starting to freeze. Judy swam as fast as she could, but the heavy batteries slowed her down. The ice on the surface was now forming quickly. Judy dropped the batteries and swam with all her might, but it was too late. She was trapped in the ice. Judy struggled in the freezing water as the ice grew thicker around her. On the shore, her father screamed for her to leave the batteries and swim faster, but she was already stuck. The family felt completely helpless. Thankfully, the spacesuits were still providing her with oxygen and heat. While comforting her daughter, Maureen used a computer and saw that Judy's battery had less than 5 hours left. They had to get her out before it died. The look on Maureen's face also showed that her own leg injury was very serious. John frantically pulled out a knife and started chipping at the ice, but it was an impossible task with such a small tool. After trying for a long time, he had only made a small hole. Just then, a bright light shone from a glacier in the distance. Will, who was a smart student, guessed that the light might be from magnesium. He explained that magnesium burns with a lot of heat and ice could make it burn even hotter. This gave John a spark of hope. After telling his daughter he would save her, he and his son left to find the magnesium. They walked across the glacier and found enough magnesium to rescue Judy. John carefully collected it, trying not to create any sparks that could be dangerous. But then Will fell through a hole in the ice. He wasn't hurt and found a way out that led to a forest. Will called his father and told him to go back and save his sister, saying he was safe. John trusted him and went back to help Judy, not knowing that Will was only pretending to be brave. All alone, Will sat down on the ground. Suddenly, he saw sparks floating in the air. He tried to call his father, but he was too far away. Will followed the sparks through the forest and found the wreckage of another spaceship, clearly alien. He took out a small camera to record this historic moment, the first proof of aliens. As he moved closer, he heard a noise behind him and turned to see an alien coming toward him. Terrified, Will ran and climbed a large tree. The alien followed, but it was only the lower half of its body and couldn't climb. As Will moved back, a large claw appeared behind him. The alien's upper body was stuck on a broken branch and couldn't reach him. Back at the lake, John spread magnesium on the ice and lit it with a torch. After burning for a while, it melted a large hole. The family worked together to clear the water, and Judy's hand finally appeared. Then Penny noticed the wind was about to blow out the torch. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and rain poured down. The cold rain froze the hole again, put out the torch, and their lighter was too wet to work. Judy's spacesuit was almost out of power. Back in the forest, night fell while Will and the alien remained trapped. A butterfly-like creature landed on Will, then on the alien's finger. When it did, the light on the alien's face dimmed. Being separated for too long was causing its body to shut down. At the same time, fire from the crashed ship spread through the forest. Flames reached Will's feet. He tried to climb higher but couldn't and had no signal to call his father. Seeing the alien struggling, Will made a brave choice. He pulled out a wire saw, cut the branch, and freed the alien's upper body. Will leaned against the tree, waiting for the fire. Suddenly, the alien walked out of the flames, climbed the tree, grabbed Will, and leapt away. They landed on a mountaintop. The alien looked at Will and changed its shape to resemble a human. Back at the ice, John and the others were desperate as Judy's suit was about to die. In the final moments, Will and the alien returned. Will asked for help, and the alien fired a red light that instantly melted the ice and lifted Judy out. Will asked for one more favor, and the alien became a small sun, keeping the family warm through the night. The scene shifts to astronaut Don, who wakes up and sees his pet chicken alive. His relief fades when he looks down into a massive canyon. Their ship is lodged on a cliff edge, the cockpit close to breaking off. Earlier, a meteor destroyed Earth, forcing humans to flee into space. During the journey, a black hole tore part of the main ship apart and dragged their smaller ship back, stranding them on this planet. Since the chicken survived, the air was breathable. Don removed his helmet but couldn't unbuckle his seatbelt because it was jammed with sand. He dropped his knife when the ship shook. His companion June woke up as the ship began to crack. She threw the knife to Don. He cut wires, used leaking oil to loosen the belt, freed himself, and rescued June. Outside, they found a flare gun and a dead crew member. They took the shoes for June because the sand was sharp. They fired a flare but saw no response. Then Don spotted a red parachute in the distance. They packed their gear, took the chicken, and moved toward it. Soon, they found a woman named Angela lying on the ground. When she coughed, it startled Don. A massive storm approached, forcing them to leave. Don initially refused to carry Angela, but then changed his mind. As the wind grew stronger, they took shelter in a nearby cave. June realized she had lost her necklace. Don went back into the storm to find it. When he returned, June said someone had to go for help. She left, telling Don he would know when to use the last flare so she could find her way back. What Don didn't know was that June had already taken the last flare with her. Back with Morin's family the next morning, they gathered around the alien. When Morin reached out to touch it, the machine suddenly activated. It moved straight to their frozen spaceship, melted the ice with its heat, and entered the cockpit. That's when John noticed a clean cut on Will's sleeve and asked how it happened. Will hesitated and said it probably happened when he fell inside the ship. The alien activated a drying mode, and the water inside the cockpit slowly drained away. John focused on repairing the ship while the alien dried the area around him. Still cautious, John approached it carefully, unsure if it was safe. Despite his doubts, the family soon moved back into the spaceship. After days of work, they even built a robotic brace for Morin's leg. It worked so well that her injury was barely noticeable. While Penny was outside fixing a water pipe, she heard an explosion in the distance. When she told the others, the family, along with Will and the alien, went to investigate. They found only wreckage. They left piles of stones as markers in case other survivors came through. When Morin used a communicator to scan for signals, a strange noise came through. Will realized it was coming from the alien's crashed ship. Curious, the family set out to find it. Back at their ship, the water pump clogged again. As Penny worked on it, she noticed a massive storm approaching. Trouble seemed to follow her every time she stepped outside. She tried calling her parents, but couldn't reach them. Penny suggested using a vehicle to rescue them, but Judy said it was buried under thick ice and told her not to worry, insisting their parents could handle themselves. With the ship frozen, Penny came up with a desperate plan. She started the ship's engines to blast the ice away. In the garage, Judy mocked her, saying Penny couldn't drive because she didn't even have a license. When Penny pulled the cover off the vehicle, she saw the tires weren't attached. She quickly assembled it. Judy, frozen by fear from something in her past, curled up in a corner. With no other choice, Penny prepared to go alone. She climbed in, placed cookies beside her, buckled up, and drove off. Judy ran outside when she heard the noise, just in time to see the vehicle speed away. Penny raced across the snow, enjoying herself until she slammed the brakes at the edge of a cliff. She tried calling her parents, but got no answer. She took a bite of a cookie, switched the vehicle to snow mode, activated the map, and treated it like a game as she continued. Led by the alien, the parents reached the alien's crashed ship. Even it seemed surprised by the damage. Inside, they explored with flashlights and found a large ring-shaped structure in the center. Outside, Will played catch with the alien. Watching them, John looked uneasy. When the ball rolled away, the alien lifted heavy debris to help Will retrieve it. Suddenly, the alien's face glowed red and the ship powered on. A hologram appeared, showing a planet, then zooming out to reveal a galaxy that wasn't the Milky Way. They were in a different galaxy. By touching the debris, Will saw the alien's memories and learned its main ship had been attacked, stranding it here. Frightened, Will ran. The alien followed, looking sad and lowering its head. Will tested it, telling it to raise one hand, then the other. When he told it to walk toward a cliff, it obeyed without hesitation. Just before it stepped off, Will stopped it and called it back. The alien knelt, and Will accepted it again, realizing he could trust it. When the parents exited the ship, they hurried back toward their own as the storm arrived. Diamonds began falling from the sky, smashing into trees. One sliced John's arm as they hid behind a large rock. At that moment, they heard Penny's voice over the communicator. The alien transformed into a bright beacon to guide her. Penny arrived, and they escaped together in the vehicle, the alien clinging to the back. From a nearby cave, Don spotted the vehicle through binoculars. He reached for the flare gun but found the box empty and realized June had stolen it. The family saw a flare in the distance and drove toward it, finding only June. She claimed she was alone. With the storm closing in, they escaped and returned safely to their ship. Back in the cave, Don held his chicken, his last hope for food. Later, Will woke from a nightmare and went to the ship's main hall. June sat there quietly. When Will opened the fridge, she asked if he'd had a bad dream and admitted she still had nightmares too. The alien entered the room. Will apologized and turned to leave, but June stopped him and warned she had seen aliens like this before, on the main ship in combat mode, hurting people. As Will walked past the alien, the ship shook and the ice above them started to crack. The family ran to the main hall. They knew they had to leave before the glacier collapsed. Morin gave everyone a job to do, but John had bad news. The engine wasn't working. The storm had blocked the air vents with sand, and they couldn't leave until they were cleared. Morin went back to the hall to give out new jobs, while John went to clear the sludge near the fuel tank. The others started cleaning other parts blocked by the storm. As John finished, he saw something moving in the water behind him. Meanwhile, Morin found out that someone had used the 3D printer to make a weapon, but no one knew who did it. While Morin was cleaning, an alarm went off. She ran to the cockpit and saw that the fuel tank was slowly draining. They were running out of time. John rushed to check it out while Morin went to the engine room to clear the blockages. June then suggested they all just get in the vehicle and leave. Morin said no, explaining that while one or two of them might survive for a little while, it wouldn't work for the whole family. June then pretended she needed to get something and snuck away to a storage room, where she started stuffing a bag with supplies to escape by herself. At that moment, the alien, who was helping clean, suddenly turned and walked away. Will followed it. The alien stopped under a pipe where strange noises were coming from. When Will tried to talk to it, the alien ignored him. Suddenly, two eel-like creatures dropped down, and the alien quickly protected Will with its strong body. To keep Will safe, the alien pushed him into the storage room, locking him inside with the deceitful June. Elsewhere, while John was checking the water near the fuel tank, something suddenly pulled him under. Later, when Will yelled for help, Penny and her mother ran over but only found the alien, who warned them that Will was in danger from a creature on the ship. Morin went to the main hall and learned her husband was in the basement. In the middle of the chaos, John came back and threw an eel-like creature on the floor, warning them not to go downstairs. Morin put its body on the table, smelled fuel on it, and realized these creatures were eating their fuel. When they looked at the fuel tank monitor, they saw it was full of them. Luckily, their ship had a second fuel tank that was still safe. The only way to save themselves was to manually shut off the first tank before the creatures contaminated both. John tried to get a wrench from the storage room, but the alien blocking his way kept repeating that Will was in danger. With no other choice, John had Judy use the 3D printer to make a new wrench while he prepared to fight the creatures. In the storage room, June learned from Will that the alien was protecting him because he had saved it before, suggesting they might have a mental connection. June became lost in thought. As John fought the alien eels, the ice above the ship cracked again, causing the ship to tilt. Judy was trapped under a box, and Penny fell into a pool of sewage filled with the creatures. At the same time, the backup fuel tank turned on. John managed to pin one of the eels down, grab a knife, and kill it. Meanwhile, Penny was throwing salt in the hallways to scare the creatures away. John ran to the basement to save Penny as she screamed. He cut the fuel line, which made all the eels go toward the leak. Judy managed to get a wrench and free herself from the box. In the storage room, June tricked Will into making the alien let her out, but as soon as she was free, she ran straight for the ship's cockpit. To understand June, we have to look at her past. Just 2 days earlier, she had drugged her twin sister, taken an identity chip from her arm, and pretended to be her sister to get on the main ship, the Resolute, which was supposed to take people to a new home. But her sister's boyfriend saw her and followed her. He soon figured out she was an imposter. During their argument, the cabin door was accidentally opened, and he was pushed into space. As the ship prepared to leave, June watched him disappear disappear into space through the open door but did nothing to stop it. Now, once again ready to leave others behind to save herself, she sat in the cockpit about to eject and escape. She started a countdown that could cause the ship to break apart and lose its navigation. Once again, June was torn about whether to stop it. At that same time, Morin was trying to install a final part to fix the ship but was having trouble. Surprisingly, June came and helped her install it at the last second. They finally fixed the engine and got everything ready. They all gathered in the cockpit. John pushed the lever to take off, but the ship didn't move. An alarm showed they only had 10% of their fuel left. Judy suggested getting rid of all the fuel because the eels in the tank could block the engine. Morin agreed it was a risk, but said the system showed no backup fuel. Judy told her that the fuel left in the pipes would be enough to get them out. John agreed, and Judy opened the valve, releasing all the eels and the rest of the fuel. At that moment, their spaceship started. The ice above them was still falling as John carefully steered the ship safely out of the collapsing glacier. Luckily, John was a great pilot, and he got them out just in time. They saw a clean, untouched forest in front of them, but their relief didn't last long because they were almost out of fuel. Still, a good pilot is always ready. The landing wasn't smooth, but he landed the ship safely. Then, they got some more great news. Other survivors had set up a camp on the planet. The parents rushed to the storage room to find Will. They saw the alien holding on to him to protect him, and John was clearly impressed. Meanwhile, the main ship, the mothership, was damaged but still working, and people were fixing it quickly. But June wasn't happy about this at all. We learned that she had been caught and questioned on the mothership before. The person questioning her said that cameras had recorded her killing someone. Just then, an alarm went off all over the ship, which stopped the questions and gave her a chance to escape. It was clear that she was the only one who didn't want to go back to the mothership. Morin discovered that the records for the 3D printer had been altered. Someone had broken the rules and run a program to make a weapon, but no one knew who. At the same time, the alien entered Will's bedroom and gave him a gun for protection. It was clear the alien had secretly used the printer. When June noticed how close Will and the alien were, she grew jealous and quickly tried to get on the boy's good side. It was obvious she was already planning to use the alien. Controlling a powerful robot like that could put her in charge of the planet. Meanwhile, the parents found the other survivor camp. Excited to see more people, everyone hugged. Don was there too, along with his pet chicken. Angela, the young woman they had rescued, was resting in the medical room. While caring for Angela, Judy learned that alien robots were responsible for the attack on the mothership. Morin and the others continued trying to contact it when John spotted wreckage from the mothership on the map. The parents and Don decided to investigate. Judy drove back to their spaceship to confront Will, realizing he had known the truth all along. She tried to warn their parents using the communicator, but Will stopped her. He explained that the alien wasn't the same anymore and had saved their lives. Judy refused to listen and ran toward the cockpit. Thinking quickly, Will restarted the communication system, disabling it for 30 minutes. He then began packing, preparing to send the alien away. June witnessed everything. After Will left, she retrieved the gun the alien had made for him from under his bed. Judy caught up with Will, who explained that he needed to take the alien far away to protect everyone, including the alien itself. Penny soon joined them, and the three left together. As they crossed a log bridge, they heard a strange sound behind them, and a monster suddenly appeared. Penny clapped her hands, and flowers began to bloom. Judy tried clapping as well, and the flowers around her bloomed too. Will knelt and clapped, and the alien copied him, raising its metal hand. Flowers bloomed all around them. The moment was broken by a loud roar. The alien warned that Will was in danger, and they hurried away. A cliff soon blocked their path, but the alien knocked down a large tree to form a bridge. As they prepared to cross, the monster appeared again. The alien shifted into attack mode and scared it away. When it turned back, it returned to its normal form and copied Will's victory gesture. Will nearly slipped in excitement. Soon after, June arrived at the same spot, having followed them secretly. Elsewhere, the parents drove their vehicle to the mothership wreckage. At first, they believed a meteor had caused the damage, but after examining the marks, Morin realized it had been an attack. Inside the storage room, they searched for supplies but found mostly junk. Eventually, they found a box labeled signal transmitter, but inside was whiskey. Don admitted he had swapped it to hide liquor, making Morin furious. She stepped outside and noticed the signal receiver. Realizing they were cut off, she returned, grabbed the whiskey from Don, and began drinking. Back with Will's group, they spotted another group of survivors in the woods. To keep the alien hidden, they stayed out of sight. Among the group was a handsome boy, and Penny immediately developed a crush. When he dropped a letter, they picked it up. When the boy returned looking for it, he discovered them and the alien. He was about to call for help, but Penny used the letter to blackmail him into silence. Since the letter was important, he agreed and left. They continued on and reached a cave. John's group ran into trouble when their vehicle lost power, forcing them to stay near the wreckage overnight. Realizing his parents wouldn't return that night, Will decided they would stay in the cave and keep the alien company for one last evening. As night fell, his parents sat near the signal receiver, drinking Don's whiskey and watching the sky. A purple glow suddenly appeared in the distance, revealing jellyfish-like alien creatures floating through the air. Later, back in the cave, Penny drew on the stone wall with red clay. The three covered their hands in the clay and pressed their handprints onto the wall. The alien watched quietly as the lights on its face flickered. Late that night, while they slept, the alien knelt before the wall, coated its metal claws in red clay, and pressed its own handprint beside theirs, wanting to belong. Back with Morin, she and John got into an argument and she got up to leave. She had only walked a few steps when an earthquake started. The signal receiver behind them fell over, and even though they tried to run, it was too late. They were trapped inside the wreckage. Desperate, they banged on the metal walls, hoping Don would rescue them. Meanwhile, Don was still busy loading his smuggled whiskey onto the vehicle. Luckily, after he finished, Don started looking for them and eventually found them trapped. The next morning, Don used an explosive to blast a large hole and rescue them. Over at Will's camp, after spending one last night with the alien robot, they got ready to say goodbye. The alien picked up a stone and gave it to Will as a gift. It once again warned Will that danger was coming, but Will said that the robot was the one in danger and that it had to stay there. With that, Will turned and walked away. The alien robot, still worried, tried to follow. Will told it one more time to stay put. As he left, the robot's face glowed with what looked like sadness. As they left, June was watching them from up high with a smile. Once they were far enough away, she quietly went into the cave. The alien robot was facing the stone wall, looking lost. June's real plan was to get the alien robot for herself. She wanted a powerful bodyguard. She started to manipulate it, telling the alien that humans couldn't be trusted and would betray it, even Will. She added that only she would save the robot, then turned and left. The nights on this planet were very scary. A woman saw a large, fluttering moth and was about to touch it when a giant tongue shot out, grabbed the moth, and swallowed it whole. This scared her so much that she just lay there without moving. Because they lost the signal receiver, they couldn't contact the mothership. To survive, they came up with a new plan: build a giant lighthouse to send a powerful beam of light into space as a distress signal. Elsewhere, Morin's calculations led her to an unbelievable and deeply worrying discovery. Finally, she made a decision. She went to the storage room, found a giant package, and was loading it onto a vehicle when John saw her and asked what she was doing. She explained there might be a problem with the sun, as it was rising earlier each day. John said this was normal on Earth, but Morin told him the change was happening way too fast. After saying goodbye to John, she drove off to investigate. At that moment, June found Will and asked for the alien robot's help. She hinted that she wanted the boy to bring the alien back. Just then, Don came by and recognized June. She was the one who had stolen the only signal flare, which almost got him killed. He confronted her about what she did, but she was so good at talking that he was left speechless. As he walked away, Judy was looking through the warehouse when she felt something was wrong. She spun around and hit Don with her elbow, breaking his nose. They then went to the medical room, where Don told her that June had stolen the signal gun and left him behind. He learned from Judy that June had never mentioned this. Judy then confronted June, who made up a story to trick her, saying she was the victim and warning her not to trust everything Don said. At that moment, Judy couldn't tell who was lying, so she left to get back to her work. On Morin's journey, as the sun was about to set, her flying device was finally ready. She cut the ropes and rose into the air. As she got higher, an amazing view appeared below her. She turned to face the sun, but just then, the system warned her that there was Hawking radiation nearby, in other words, a black hole. The group of human survivors, stranded on an unknown planet and unable to contact their mothership, worked together to build a giant lighthouse. When they flipped the switch, a powerful beam of light shot into the sky, and everyone cheered. The light attracted swarms of fluttering moths. June was among the crowd. She quietly slipped away to the high-tech fence meant to keep creatures out and reprogrammed it to allow things through. Clearly, she had a plan. Afterward, she returned to camp and told John that his son was hiding the alien in the woods. John confronted Will and demanded answers. A frightened Will confessed everything. The mothership, the Resolute, had malfunctioned because of the alien robot, causing them to crash on this planet. He admitted the robot had once gone on a rampage, but insisted it had changed and had saved their family and others during the storm. John didn't care about explanations. He only wanted to know where the robot was. Will refused, afraid his father would hurt it. Suddenly, a monstrous roar echoed through the camp. A massive creature began climbing the lighthouse. People scattered in panic. The light that attracted the moths had also lured the creature that hunted them, likely part of June's plan. The lighthouse, built in a hurry, couldn't support the monster's weight and collapsed. As Penny tried to flee, the creature spotted her. June June urged Will to call the alien. At that moment, no one cared that the robot existed, only that it could save them. Penny hid inside a tent, believing she was safe. Then a recorded message from the mothership began playing. She rushed to shut it off, but the sound drew the monster's attention. Tore open the tent and charged. John arrived just in time, standing between Penny and the creature. He raised his knife, but it was useless against the monster's fangs. As it lunged, something slammed into it. The alien robot had arrived. Will felt relief, while the others stared in shock. The monster roared again, calling another creature. John and the others fled as the alien robot was pinned down by both monsters. It didn't fight back, obeying Will's earlier command. Panicking, Will ran outside. Inside the ship, June watched with a satisfied smile. Seeing the robot about to be destroyed, Will screamed for it to turn strong. The robot's facial lights turned red. It threw the monsters aside and stood in a four-armed battle mode. When another creature attacked, the robot's hands glowed yellow as it crushed and hurled the monsters away, defeating them easily. Just as everyone thought it was over, the robot turned toward the humans, its claws glowing. Will ran in front of it as his father shouted for him to stop. His mother arrived at that moment. Will grabbed the robot's claws, and as it looked at him, it powered down. The red light faded back to blue. Inside the ship, June quietly planned her next move. Afterward, Will's family fully accepted the alien robot and brought it aboard their ship. Inside the cabin, Morin shared the results of her tests. The planet's orbit was unstable, and a black hole had formed behind the sun. If they stayed, the planet would slowly spiral closer until everything burned. The survivors would die unless they escaped soon. As Morin and John debated whether to tell the others, Penny secretly listened from the doorway. The next morning, the survivors gathered to discuss the alien robot. From Angela's account, they learned the first attack had been planned by alien robots. She had been badly injured, and her husband had been killed. Victor, the group's leader, proposed putting the robot on trial and locking it up as they once did on Earth. John argued that the robot had changed, like a rebooted machine, and had saved lives the night before. In the end, they agreed to keep the robot isolated from the rest of the group. Furious, Angela stormed out, with June following close behind. June tried to manipulate her by pretending to offer psychological help, but Angela walked away. Meanwhile, Don told Victor they needed fuel to escape the planet. The alien eels had consumed most of it, but Don believed fuel from their crashed ship in the desert was still usable. In return, he demanded more money. Outside, Angela noticed a green ribbon tied to a rope. Following it, she found a package. Inside was a gun. Without hesitation, she hid it behind her back. In the forest, Will examined strange stones when the alien robot approached and handed him a larger rock. Will said they had similar rocks on Earth. The robot split it open, revealing colorful ores inside. Then it raised its hand for a high five. Will smiled and returned the gesture. The lights on the robot's face glowed softly, almost like happiness. Meanwhile, Don had already left to find fuel. He hadn't gone far when a cliff blocked his path, and gas started shooting up from the ground ahead. Don wasn't bothered. He casually turned on some music and took a different route. Back at the camp, Penny had asked the handsome boy out on a date. When they got to their spot, they saw that the waterfall had dried up because the planet was getting hotter. Penny then told him her plan. She was going to pretend to fall into the water and yell for help so he could rescue her, and after that, we could really fall into a hormone yoga session. It was clear Penny had liked the handsome boy since they first met, and now the two of them were falling in love. It's quite surprising that they could still find time for romance in such a dangerous place. On Don's end, they had reached the location of the spaceship, but it was nowhere to be seen. They thought the ship might have fallen off the cliff, but it was too high to see anything. Shortly after, Victor called off the deal and went back to camp. When Judy found out about their deal, she confronted Don. He admitted he was just trying to make some money and was now mad that he couldn't. Angrily, he kicked the ground, only to hear a metal sound. After digging through the sand, they discovered the spaceship had been buried right under their feet. They quickly found the entrance to the ship and connected the fuel hose. Since the area could collapse at any time, they used 2 vehicles and ropes to keep the spaceship stable. Just as the last drop of fuel was being taken out, the ship's balance shifted, and it was about to fall off the cliff. They decided to cut the ropes and let the ship fall. However, Don was still inside. He rushed to the storage room, opened a box, and discovered June's real identity. He knew Judy was too kind to give up on him, so he had no choice but to cut the last safety rope himself. The ship then fell. As everyone rushed to the cliff to mourn, a hand reached out. At the last second, Don had managed to escape. On the spaceship, Angela found out June was pretending to be a psychologist and agreed to have therapy with her. June used the chance to bring up Angela's painful memories from her time on the mothership, but couldn't get her to the next step of her plan. Waiting outside the room, June's smile showed that everything was going just as she wanted. After the session, Angela couldn't sit still. She left her room and asked where John's family's spaceship was. Meanwhile, Will and a few others were playing poker on the spaceship. June noticed Angela walking toward them with a cane. Soon after, Angela made up a reason to send Will away, asking him to invite his mother to play with them. When the alien robot tried to follow, John told it that Will would be right back, which calmed the robot down. Penny noticed the screen on the robot's face was changing expressions. It looked like it was smiling, which she had never seen before, and it made John happy. But just then, Angela appeared behind him. When John asked if there was a problem, Angela raised a gun at the robot. Seeing the gun, the robot's face screen turned red, and it changed into attack mode. John told the robot to leave. When Will reached his mother, she hesitated but finally agreed to go with him. Sensing something was wrong, Will rushed back toward the ship. As he arrived, he saw Angela shooting at the alien robot. Enraged, the robot shifted into combat mode, growing 2 extra arms. It advanced on Angela, throwing John aside when he tried to stop it. Will screamed for the robot to halt, and it froze, recognizing his voice. Horror filled Will's face. The family gathered around the injured John, while Will watched the alien robot standing at the doorway, looking down with what seemed like guilt. Inside, June comforted a shaken Angela, assuring her that no one would blame her. Will carried the alien robot into the woods and stopped at a cliff. Hugging it, he said his final goodbye, telling it that he had to take responsibility and that it had to jump. The robot looked at the cliff, then back at Will, as if waiting for him to stop it. Seeing Will's tear-streaked face, the robot stepped forward and fell, shattering into pieces below. As the group loaded fuel to prepare for departure, the ground suddenly shifted. The road collapsed, leaving only a path through a field of erupting gas. They noticed the eruptions occurred at regular intervals, every 3.5 minutes. Calculating their top speed, they prepared to cross. When the gas died down, they drove forward, but trouble struck. A control cable came loose, causing braking problems and slowing the fuel vehicle. With only 2.5 minutes left, the blonde boy volunteered to climb onto the roof to reconnect the cable. Despite being nearly thrown off, he held on and managed to fix it after several attempts, allowing the vehicle to accelerate again. Just as relief set in, with only seconds left, a violent gas eruption struck. The vehicle jolted and flipped. Judy rushed over and found the blonde boy trapped beneath the fuel tank. A rock wedged beneath the vehicle prevented it from crushing him completely, giving them hope. However, the rock had punctured the tank. Moving it could spill all the fuel and doom their escape. Captain Victor suggested calling another vehicle, warning that lifting it now would waste everything. Don climbed into a tank and managed to raise the fuel vehicle, but fuel poured out through a large tear. Though the mission failed, the blonde boy was freed. They continued their journey in the tank, the blonde boy riding in the back. At first, spirits were high. He joked about getting new legs, and Judy promised to teach him to surf when he recovered. But his condition worsened quickly. Despite Judy's desperate efforts, he died. Meanwhile, John and Morin went to find Angela to learn who had given her the gun. Suddenly, gas erupted in front of their vehicle. John reversed, but the gas followed. He swerved sharply and backed onto a slope, stopping only after hitting something. When they opened the door, they realized they were stuck in a pit of thick tar. The smell was overwhelming, and movement was impossible. Their communication antenna had snapped off and lay just outside. With no way to call for help, they had to escape on their own. They found a rope and attached a hook. John climbed onto the roof and tried to secure it, unaware the vehicle was slowly sinking. When Morin shouted, he scrambled back inside just as tar swallowed the vehicle. Trapped, their oxygen dwindled and the temperature climbed. Determined to save her, John took the only spacesuit. Ready to sacrifice himself, he helped Morin put on the helmet, calling her the strongest person he knew. As he reached for the hatch, she stopped him with a sudden idea. They could use the vehicle's airtight seal to force the tar away. The vehicle still carried helium, used earlier to test the planet's atmosphere. They grabbed a toy tunnel meant for their daughter and attached it to the hatch to create a temporary airlock. Pumping in helium, they waited, then crawled through the tunnel, cutting themselves free with a knife. Escaping at the last moment, they burst into laughter from relief. Elsewhere, June hummed quietly, satisfied with her plan. She returned to the cliff where the alien robot had fallen. Using binoculars, she saw its shattered remains below. Climbing down, she gathered the pieces. Will had once saved the robot, earning its loyalty and protection. June believed that if she could revive it, she could control its power. After reassembling the parts, she waited, but the robot remained lifeless. Frustrated, she screamed in rage, wondering what it would take to bring it back. Captain Victor returned to the camp, where the handsome boy found his father and told him about Penny's warning that their planet was going to be destroyed. Meanwhile, June had gone back to her cabin and was watching the video files that Will had recorded. At that moment, the sleeping robot parts seemed to react to a sound from the video. John and Morin, who had just barely survived the tar pit, were walking back to the camp, when they heard the sound of a spaceship's engine. They followed the noise, climbed a hill, and saw Captain Victor and his family getting their spaceship ready for takeoff. Since they had used most of their fuel to rescue the blonde boy, they didn't have much left. Their plan was to use what they had to escape the planet. But Morin told them their ship was too heavy and they didn't have enough fuel to get through the atmosphere. They would run out of fuel before they reached space and would crash. Victor refused to believe her and insisted on launching anyway. While they were talking, John snuck onto the spaceship, opened the cockpit door, hit the emergency stop button, and then used the communicator to call all the survivors to a meeting. There, John told everyone that according to his wife's research, their planet's orbit had changed, and it would soon get dangerously close to the sun. The temperature would rise until everything on the planet was burned up. Morin was inside the spaceship, trying to figure out how to make it lighter so they could use the last of their fuel to escape the planet's gravity and be rescued by the mothership. At that moment, a picture on Will's t-shirt gave her an idea. She quickly went outside and announced that they needed to strip off all the parts they didn't need to make the ship light enough to fly, including the navigation system. But the navigation system is like the spaceship's brain and is needed for takeoff. Morin then suggested that they didn't need to fly the ship from the inside. She said that in the early days of space travel, NASA's capsules were just like tin cans controlled from the ground. They could use that old-fashioned method to launch from the planet. After that, they started taking the spaceship apart. Morin met with her daughter Judy, who told her about how June had stolen her sister's identity. They then drove back to the spaceship. Inside, Morin saw her son with June, so she sent Will away and tricked June into going into the storage room, then locked her inside. June tried to use sob stories to get sympathy, but Morin didn't fall for her tricks anymore and didn't trust her at all. As Morin was about to leave, June threatened her, saying she had messed with the escape ship. Morin didn't believe her empty threat and turned to leave. Morin found John. Because they had taken so many parts off the spaceship, it could now only be flown by hand. Choosing a pilot was now their biggest problem. John and the others were looking at data on a computer. Because of the incredible force during takeoff, the pilot would probably pass out, so they needed the person who would wake up the fastest. It turned out that John woke up the quickest, so he was the only person who could do it. But John refused, not wanting to leave his wife and children. Morin reminded him of his promise to come back to them safely. They had a family meeting, and after talking it over, they agreed to let John be the pilot. Before the real launch, they did a practice run. They used ropes tied to a hatch to feel like gravity, and John was put under more and more force until he passed out. He woke up a short time later and, with his wife's help, continued to fly the simulation. But he was still too slow, and the first try failed. They then did several more practice tests, but it was too much for John's body, and they had to stop to let him rest. Just then, they got a message from the mothership. Because of the black hole, the ship had to leave this part of the universe in 24 hours. If they couldn't get on it by then, they would die with the planet. Will went to the storage room where June was locked up. She told him that other people could fly the spaceship and it didn't have to be his father. Just as Will was about to ask more, his mother called him away. After a short discussion, Don showed that he knew a lot about the spaceship. That's when they remembered that Don was the ship's repairman and knew everything about it. He knew the spaceship better than anyone and was asked to help, but at first he said no. As he was walking away, Judy caught up with him. She convinced him, and he finally agreed. After that, the two men did the test together, and surprisingly, it worked on the very first try. But with time running out, they didn't have a chance to do a second test. John said goodbye to his family one by one, and Don asked Judy to take care of his pet chicken. With everyone watching, they got into the vehicle and went to get the spaceship ready for takeoff. Morin also went back to the spaceship to start the launch sequence. The two sisters sat nearby, ready to watch. A tearful Will was very worried about his father. He then went back to where June was being held and asked who could fly instead of his father. June opened her backpack and showed him the head of the alien robot. She said they could bring it back to life. Will said no, feeling that it was his fault the robot had turned bad. June insisted that this time they could make it good if he would just open the door. She said they could go together and save the robot, and it could take his father's place so he could come back. The young boy was deep in thought. By this time, John and Don had already reached the spaceship, and Morin was in position. As his wife counted down, the spaceship successfully took off. As it went up, the gravity got stronger, and both men passed out. Morin kept calling to them until they woke up. Following her instructions, they successfully flew the ship, letting out heat from the engine. Everyone was relieved to see it was working, but then they faced the next danger, a strange cloud. Just as the two were getting ready for their next instruction, someone appeared behind Morin and knocked her out. It was June. The scene then cuts to Will, tied up in the room where June had been held. Turns out that June had tricked Will into letting her out. Without anyone giving commands, the spaceship spaceship soon exploded in midair as everyone watched in horror. It looked like John and Don had just died. Inside the hall, 3 people are sad about the explosion, but Will believes his father is still alive. He insists it must be a machine problem and that's why they can't contact him. At this moment, Judy plans to look for her mother, who was taken away by June. Will wants to go with her, but Judy says no and asks him to stay. Will knows that all of this happened because of his own mistakes. Holding the signal receiver, he goes back to his room. Judy makes one last meal before leaving to find her mother. Elsewhere, Morin wakes up to find herself looking at the taken-apart pieces of the alien robot and a free June. June then ties Morin to a tree and starts putting the robot back together, but it still doesn't do anything. June guesses the problem isn't with the robot, but with the spaceship itself. Saying this, she takes Morin into the alien ship. Morin tries to push June away to escape, but accidentally sets off a reaction. Just like what happened on the mother ship, the spaceship's special engine reacts. Morin says she had seen it before when she touched it in a secret area on the mothership. Then, both of them lift their hands and touch a groove at the same time. Unexpectedly, the engine successfully turns on, and the alien door opens. This brings back memories for June. She remembers that while escaping on the mothership, she heard 2 people arguing that the aliens might come back for the engine, and if it were lost, everyone would die. Now, they finally understand the robot didn't attack the mothership for no reason. Humans had actually captured an alien ship and stolen its engine. The aliens were just trying to get their property back. At this time, Judy, in her vehicle, uses a locator and finds a signal far away. She checks it and realizes it's her mother's vehicle and immediately leaves to rescue her. June is busy putting the alien robot together. Even though they found the spaceship's engine, the robot still won't turn on. Frustrated with the pile of useless metal, June gets angry and even kicks it. What she doesn't notice is that when her arm touched the wreckage of the alien spaceship, it slowly started to change. Just then, she hears some rustling and the screams of a chicken in the bushes. Curious, she looks and pulls back the leaves to find the pet chicken. Suddenly, Judy appears behind her and knocks her out with a stun device. She quickly unties her mother, grabs the chicken, closes the vehicle door, and gets ready to drive away. However, the alien robot, which has suddenly come back to life, blocks their path. They try to back up, but the robot grabs the bumper, and the vehicle won't move, its back wheels just spinning. Then, the stunned June surprisingly gets up from behind the robot, which then gives a warning. The alien robot seems to have accepted June as its new master, since she was the one who brought it back to life. Meanwhile, Will, frustrated with himself, is taking out his anger by smashing decorations. While doing this, he throws the rock the alien robot gave him, and it splits in 2. Will smells it and discovers it has a foul odor, like poop. He takes it to a biologist to be checked and learns it is a powerful biofuel, basically fossilized super poop. Every spaceship had a machine to turn poop into fuel, but it would take humans at least 2 or 3 years to make enough fuel to leave the planet. But if they could collect enough of this super poop from a certain cave, it would be much easier. But then the scientist brings up an important point. In the sample, he found traces of every creature he knew of on the planet, which meant that the creature making the super poop was at the top of the food chain. Collecting it would be extremely dangerous. Even so, they gathered everyone and went to the cave. As they walked with torches, they saw a huge amount of the super poop in front of them. The group excitedly moved forward to look at it when suddenly, Victor stepped on something. He looked down and realized it was a fresh pile of it right under his foot. He shined his flashlight up and saw giant alien bats hanging overhead. They gathered to discuss what to do. The good news was that there was enough biofuel to fuel all their spaceships. The bad news was they needed to break it down and carry it out of the cave without making any noise. Carefully, they went into the cave to collect it. At one point, someone accidentally dropped a crowbar, but luckily, the quiet sound didn't wake up the creatures. They continued collecting without any more problems. On another note, Penny was asking Will about the radio he always carried. Just then, the radio unexpectedly made a crackling sound. They quickly turned it off after realizing it might be a message from their father, but the noise had already woken up the alien bats. In a panic, they hurried out of the cave. In the chaos, the scientist was caught by a bat. Realizing her boyfriend was still inside, Penny rushed back just in time to help him dodge an attack. As they tried to escape, a bat blocked their path. In the next second, Angela, who was still in the cave, pulled her to safety. Looking at the bats, they realized the creatures were blind and only used sound to find things. They held their breath and tiptoed past them, almost making it out. But suddenly, a bat charged at them. They quickly ducked, and just as a bat hovered over Penny, drooling, Angela created a distraction by throwing a rock, allowing them to finally escape. The relieved pair hugged each other. Will was thrilled, saying he had sent a radio message to his father, who had replied, though he still didn't know where he was. Everyone packed up the samples they collected and went back to their spaceship. Meanwhile, Above a planet, a spaceship wreckage was floating in space. John and Don had actually survived and were very happy because they learned from the radio that Will had found the fuel. Although they had miraculously survived the explosion, the oxygen in their spacesuits would only last a few more hours. Luckily, John contacted his son using Morse code and learned about the fuel. They would be rescued very soon. On the planet, one spaceship after another successfully launched using fuel made from the superpoop. Just then, Will and Penny heard the sound of an engine and hurried to meet it. They were about to share the good news with their mother when June appeared from the other side, with the alien robot following her. At her command, the robot walked toward them. Will tried to stop it, but was suddenly knocked down, falling hard. It was clear that June was now the robot's master. She declared that she had saved it this time, saying that friends don't let friends walk off cliffs. Suddenly, the signal receiver made a sound. They quickly checked it, and John told them through the radio that they would launch a signal flare in space so they could find them using the spaceship's thermal imaging. But Morin's ship had to leave in just 88 minutes, so they needed to act fast. Although June disagreed, she couldn't fly the ship and had to reluctantly agree. Meanwhile, in space, Don was putting together circuits, getting ready to release a stream of burning gas from the wreckage. Just then, a floating object in his helmet got into his eye, and since he couldn't see, he had to give the job to John. On the spaceship, Will handed a baseball to the alien robot, hoping to bring back its memories. Unexpectedly, the robot just threw the ball away, leaving Will disappointed. Just as the spaceship was about to take off, the planet faced its final destruction. Everyone got to their places. With Morin as the pilot, the spaceship successfully launched and flew through foggy skies into space. But then, something strange happened. Even though they were in space, there was no zero gravity, and things didn't float. Will asked his mother if they had reached orbit, and she said they had. It turned out that before they left, the robot had taken an engine from the alien spaceship and hidden it under their vehicle. At that moment, besides their ship, all the other ships had successfully boarded the mothership. Captain Victor contacted them to say thank you. But because of the black hole, the area had become extremely dangerous, and the mothership had to leave in an hour. Hearing this, they prepared to first rescue John and Don. At that moment, the spaceship showed it was low on fuel. June then told Morin she had to put her personal feelings aside and think about what was best for everyone, which sometimes meant sacrificing a few people to save the many. She set a course for the mothership. Morin replied that it was impossible. June insisted that by going back to the mothership, they could all leave together, or she would throw Morin off the ship. Morin, worried about her husband, quickly steered the ship down. Seeing the danger, the robot pushed June into the hull, and the doors closed. Morin then took back control and locked the hull. June ordered the robot to break the glass, but it only left a small mark. Two people, stuck together in the wreckage, continued their work. John said he once thought he would lose his amazing children forever, but crashing on this planet turned out to be the best thing that ever happened, because it helped him find them again. Don was moved by John's words, and tears came to his eyes. He managed to clear the particles from his eye, took over the unfinished job, and successfully lit the wreckage. Meanwhile, Morin, using thermal imaging from the mothership, found them. She got the ship's harpoon ready and prepared to fire it for the rescue, starting the spaceship toward them. Soon, Will spotted them. At that moment, June found the emergency escape exit and made her way out. Hearing the noise, Morin fired the harpoon, but it stopped just before it reached its target. John quickly called his wife, but back on the ship, June and the robot had gotten out of the hull. Morin and the others had already left the cockpit and were hiding in the ship's garage. She told the children to get into the vehicle, preparing to face the robot alone. But Will, refusing to believe the robot had betrayed them, walked up to it and asked if it knew who he was, telling it he was its friend. The lights on the robot's face flickered as if it was thinking. It then held out its hand. Just then, Morin, using a crane, threw the robot out into space. She then tied Will and herself to a post with a rope and opened the hatch. The sudden suction threw everything, including the robot, into space. Gasping for breath, Morin quickly shut the hatch and checked on her children. Suddenly, something forced the hatch door open, revealing a strangely shaped alien spaceship. An arm reached out from it. It was the alien robot with another combat-ready robot. The two looked at each other, and the blue light on one's face turned red. It then pointed at the vehicle, walked over, pushed Morin aside, and blasted the vehicle away. Will was also thrown out. The combat robot picked up the spaceship engine. At that moment, Will's spacesuit started leaking. As the combat robot got ready to attack Will, the humanoid robot's lights flickered, as if it were thinking. Just as the combat robot moved to strike, it was suddenly thrown away. The humanoid robot then fixed Will's suit, and Will said he knew it hadn't changed. The combat robot behind him attacked, and the two robots, being the same kind, were evenly matched. Finally, the humanoid robot looked at Will and charged at the combat robot, and they both floated away into deep space. Will went to check on his mother. Although her suit was leaking, it could last a bit longer. The glass on the vehicle was now cracking. The only solution was to close the hatch, but since it had been forced open, the system that opens and closes it was broken. Will crawled out to manually close it. He found the switch outside the ship and, after a lot of effort, managed to close it. Next, he needed to climb to the other side to get in through the airlock. Just as he was about to succeed, he accidentally slipped into space. Suddenly, someone appeared and saved Will. It was his father. Turns out that moments before, June, having a change of heart, had rescued John and Dawn. Meanwhile, the mothership hadn't left them behind and was slowly coming closer. But just then, a strange noise started. The engine of the alien ship inside the garage extended tentacle-like lines, taking control of the entire ship. A massive beam of light appeared, and they were sucked into a black hole. As the light faded, they found themselves in an unknown star system, which looked like the pattern the alien robot had drawn on the ground. And that's the end of Season 1. Hope you liked it. If yes, please hype the video and subscribe to the channel.